My name is Vaughn Acord. I am a co-owner of a salon in Manhattan that employs 73 employees right now. 3 years ago, we launched my lifetime dream, V76 by Vaughn, so I'm a founder of that brand. I am married. I've got 2 kids, one in college, one about to go to college, and a pug owner for as long as I can remember, I think 5 years old. My life started very early on in music, and at around 5 years old, I was roaming around beating on my chest to Motown. I grew up in the Great Lakes, very close to Detroit, and AM radio was the thing. And I remember sitting in my mom's car and listening to the radio while she was in the post office or doing whatever she did, and I would pretend that I was playing the drums on these songs, and I would hit my chest. She noticed I was keeping a beat with all this stuff, so she bought me a snare drum. Make a very long story short, I never stopped hearing that, and I trusted my ears and I trusted my hands, and I started playing music at a very early age, and it provided me with my first paycheck growing up in Cleveland and doing session work at 14, 15, touring to New York City at 16 to open for the Runaways and CBGBs. But all the while I was doing that, I was following these iconic artists that started to really trigger inspiration in me and where I was going in my head musically. And part of that became very fashionable. The risk-taking that was happening and the fashion that was happening right alongside music made me want to do both, play music and get into this industry. And that happened. I did my first haircut in 1976. And it just ignited something in me that I wanted to figure it out. At that time, my mother was single, took everything to put me, the oldest, through college. She set out to do that, went to Ohio State. And at a very early time that first year, I realized that I was burning through her money, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just doing what I thought I should be doing. And these very fashionable men were showing up at parties that looked amazing. And it was the era of Studio 54. It was 77, 78. And I knew that I wanted to do that. You know, it was a part of me. I was continuing to play music, but I knew that this passion in the hair industry and beauty was sort of burning inside of me. So I met a few, I started talking to them, and they were going to beauty school or barber school, cosmetology school in downtown Columbus. And I said to myself, yeah, that's something I can travel the world and do, like music. Again, going back to, I didn't know it at the time, but it was this comfort of trusting this, you know. So I enrolled, you know, I dropped out of school and I enrolled, and my mother, I got her blessing for it, and I stayed on campus and lived at Ohio State, but I went to this school and went to the barbering element of the school. From there, I ended up going to Europe and living for about 4 years. I was spotted at a nightclub and spent 7 years modeling throughout Europe with the Click agency and the lead in London. One of the first people I met over there was Vivian McKinder, and she was doing my hair for Trevor Sorby. And I would question her about her graduation, and is she tapering the back of my hair, and is she going to be layering it tight or leave? And she would finally, at one point she said, well, where are these terms coming from? Not normally do I have a discussion about hair with a model. And I said, well, I used to, I have a license. I used to go to beauty school, and she, along with another icon in the industry, Dwight Miller, that I had met, both said, you should get back into it. You would be great. I never forgot the confidence and the look in her face and some of the others like Trevor and Dwight that said, you would be great, you should do it. Spent several years continuing to model. My wife came over to study in Geneva at the UN, and we spent some time in Europe together. And at that point, she was done with school. I had been there a while, and we were set to come back to the States. And she said, I want to live in New York City. So I went, and I continued to model, and she dug into her career. And you know, you form a shell, you form a callousness over being in a subjective business like that it's not about you. It's not about your drumming, your hairdressing abilities, who you are. It's nothing more than what you look like. And you either fit this role or you don't. And again, that was an okay thing for me. But at times you banked on it, right? I was banking on it, things didn't happen. And I remember one night coming home and I was frustrated. I didn't get this, and I felt like as her partner, I wasn't holding up financially my end of stuff, and I needed to I needed to do something. And that's when she said, you should get back into hair. You've been told, you know you were always good at it. You know it's there. Why don't you get back into hair? So I called Vivian, I called Dwight Miller, and I called some of these people that I respected and said, remember me, and they recommended that I go see this new thing happening in New York called Bumble. You know, I think at 28, 29 years old, I was sweeping floors, watching kids that were extremely talented at 21, 22 underneath me start to fly. And, but I had to have it. I had to get that apprenticeship. I had to make that happen. I committed to it, and I did. I achieved it. It took about 9 months, and it began, and I just followed it. I felt confident doing that. I knew what looked good on a man. And being a man and coming from where I came from, I just felt confident, and it just strengthened me. You know, like I said earlier, my eyes started to become more and more focused on that, and it's more or less led me in that direction. I was sort of the guy at Bumble that was doing men, and the agencies were calling, and all of that just started to happen for me. V76 is something I've been thinking about, not necessarily under the name V76, but I've been thinking about having a perspective on the men's grooming for many years. I started to play with different formulations of, this was a very popular product at the time. Waxes and pomades, Brilliantines were very good in certain types of hair, but not all. And from that, I just started thinking about if only. And it was starting to, I think, just manifest. I was starting to conceptualize what it would be like to do this. You know, V76 started to mimic what I was doing, and that was working with men and having an answer for them quickly. Sometimes it was in the chair, and a guy that's an attorney, and he's got to be out of here in a few minutes. Or sometimes it was in the Oval Office at the White House with the President of the United States that you literally have 11 minutes. As a matter of fact, Vaughn, can you do it in 9? It's that tight. So I started asking questions. I started working with various labs on my own just to see if I could put these pieces together. And it was then that I was approached by LBP and these old friends, these like-minded people. They are like-minded with my vision artistically, creatively, the aesthetic, the level that we want to take this to, which I'm sure you're being absorbed in all weekend. They don't do things on the slide. They don't do it on the cheap. They take huge risks financially, well thought out risks. But when they believe, they support. And I think you could talk to anybody at any of the brands right now at LBP that would follow me in saying that whatever we've wanted to make this a reality, we get. And the team is something I've never experienced before. To know now the components of what it takes to do what we're doing at V76, there's no way on earth that I could have possibly done that myself. So V76 it's just reminiscent of what I have done, and that is embrace this word grooming. It's bigger. It's not just hair. It's not just shaving. It's not just skin. It's about a guy on the go. It's a lifestyle.